If you're anything like me, you might be a little burned out by Kickstarters. Asking money in exchange for a promise that you'll eventually get something doesn't feel like the greatest deal. But for the metroidvania genre, crowdfunding is possibly the best thing that's happened to it. Hollow Knight, Blasphemous, Time Spinner, Bloodstained, Haiku, and Lone Fungus, which just released and I can confirm is great, are all excellent metroidvanias made possible recently by crowdfunding. Rune Fencer Illyia is another metroidvania which just launched its Kickstarter, and you've probably never heard of it. It was created in a single bedroom office by a married couple without any publisher support or funding, but it's been in the works for over 5 years. While they both have experience in the gaming industry, spending so much time and energy without any external monetary support is a huge gamble. And for us fans of Metroidvanias, pledging to the Kickstarter is also a gamble. So I'm here to answer the question, is the game worth it? I was given an early access preview build about 2 hours long. I wasn't sponsored or told to make a video, but the devs were aware that I was interested in their game. I mean, it's inspired by Hollow Knight, and the main combat gimmick is being able to steal powers from enemies. And I'm a huge Kirby fan, so I was already sold. But while it's undeniably up my alley, I always maintain a healthy degree of skepticism, and my standards are pretty high. So it surprised me when I first opened the game and saw just how cute and well written it was. The starting sequence takes place on an airship, introducing the game's characters Illyia and Lily, twin sisters training as runists. I really liked the sequence because lots of details are told through short bits of dialogue. The game doesn't bog the player down with boring exposition, but instead drops small hints and piques the player's curiosity about the world while focusing primarily on the sisters and their relationship. Lily is an Emerald Runist, the highest class. Illyia is a Moonstone Runist, the lowest class. Illyia doesn't get up for training on time, her belongings are a mess, and she's always in trouble with the school headmaster, but her sister Lily wants to help. The game's tutorial sequence is Illyia practicing against a dummy as her sister coaches and cheers her on, hinting that she'd been up all night preparing to help her sister out. The characters are adorable, and I'm a sucker for good kids in stories. So I quickly fell in love with them, but the game's combat mechanics are also interesting. Illyia has 4 directional attacks and a 3-hit grounded combo, which is animation cancelable at any point by rolling. There's also a riposte mechanic where if you roll into an active enemy hitbox, you're given an empowered attack on your next swing. I like the design because I sometimes find riposte mechanics in games awkward and cumbersome to pull off. In this case, it just makes your next basic attack stronger. But without spoiling, things happen and their airship crashes, separating the sisters onto a floating island that has an interconnected layout suspiciously similar to Planet Zeeb's Dracula's Castle or Hollow Nest. And Illyia sets off on a quest to find her sister. All she can find is Lily's emerald bracelet, something Lily would never part with intentionally. The player meets some basic enemies, Balders, and is introduced to the game's healing mechanic. It works similar to Hollow Knight. You strike enemies to fill up a meter called glyph, and once it's full, you focus for a moment to expend your glyph to heal. However, there's a risk-reward to it because it fills up your entire HP bar, so you're incentivized to heal as late as possible to maximize how much health you get from the heal. Shortly after, you gain access to the Energy Strike. It's a short-range charged attack that feels like a nail art, but is interesting because it has a dual purpose. It can be used to strike certain stationary objects and send them in a direction of your choosing, often a component of solving puzzles. Or players can kill enemies with it to steal their rune. Runes can be collected to temporarily gain runic spells or runic weapons based upon the enemy killed. These consume glyph when cast, but have powerful effects in combat. Weapon runes even have unique combos, aerial attacks, and dodge attacks, giving you an entire new moveset to play with. My favorite thing about the game, though, is just that it's a lot of fun. From the runic abilities, to the minigames and the puzzles, to the boss fights, and to the secrets and items you find exploring the world, the game is just a constant drip feed of fun in the best way possible. It felt like every room in the game contained something new. And the game also has a basic item system. Items do things like deal projectile damage, provide additional health similar to Lifeblood, or provide passive glyph restoration over time, but you have a finite amount of item slots and any extras are sent into storage, which you can only access at a resting point. Similar to Hollow Knight, you can save and quit anywhere, but you have to rest to set your respawn point. At a statue, you can rest and swap memory stones, which is the game's equivalent to charms. Memory stones do things like power up your 3-hit combo or your riposte, or increase damage dealt at the cost of increasing damage taken, or add a flat bonus to your maximum health. Illyia can also eat different foods at a statue to provide temporary health or presumably other effects later in the game. There's even a cooking system allowing you to turn raw ingredients into meals. Throughout the 2-hour early access, I didn't run into any technical issues or glitches of any kind. And that's surprising because as a speedrunner, I'm always looking for them. That's not to say that I felt the game was perfect. I had a few gripes with the combat, which I forwarded to the devs. Contact damage felt a bit frustrating at times. There's a backroll mechanic that's easy to misinput and hurl yourself into an enemy or hazard, and the hitbox of the down slash seems to have a shorter range than the visual. Melee attacks are also performed when you release the button rather than when you press it down, which makes the game feel a little less responsive. I also felt like I wasn't able to use runic powers as much as I would have liked because I was spending all my glyph on healing. The difficulty of the game in general was on the high side, and while I find that appealing, it sometimes felt like I didn't have the option to use the runic powers, which are arguably the main selling point of the combat. But while these issues definitely impacted my enjoyment of the game, it's important to remember that the game's still far from release, and I think it's likely the combat will become more polished as time goes on. Overall, Rune Fencer Illyia really impressed me, and I know there's a lot more content already developed for the game because of all the Twitter previews showing off the other mechanics. Anyway, that's all for now, and we'll be going back to our regularly scheduled Hollow Knight content. But I hope you enjoyed the video.